The dust-laden wind howled across the auction platform like a mournful spirit as Olivia Zachary stood with her head bowed, the tattered remains of her once fine dress barely clinging to her shivering frame. It was 1876 in Whisper Creek, Colorado territory, and she had just become another piece of property to be bartered away not for her worth as a human being, but for the threadbare clothes that still covered her body after everything else had been taken from her. $2 for the woman's garments, the auctioneer bellowed, his voice carrying across the crowd of rough-looking men. Comes with the girl wearing them. Laughter rippled through the gathering. Olivia kept her gaze fixed on the wooden planks beneath her feet, refusing to show the humiliation and fear that threatened to consume her. 3 weeks ago, she had been the educated daughter of a Boston merchant. Now, after the stagecoach robbery that had claimed her parents' lives and her subsequent capture by opportunistic bandits, she was nothing more than merchandise. $5, called a slurred voice from the crowd. $7, countered another. The bidding continued, each sum more insulting than the last. Olivia clenched her jaw, fighting back tears. She would not break, not here in front of these vultures. $50. A hush fell over the crowd. The voice was deep, commanding, and undeniably sober. Olivia dared to lift her gaze. Standing at the back of the crowd was a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. His black Stetson was pulled low, but she could see the firm set of his jaw, the way his hand rested casually on his gun belt, not threatening, but making it clear he wasn't to be trifled with. $50 from Mr. Flynn York, the auctioneer announced, sounding both surprised and pleased. Do I hear 60? No one spoke. The crowd parted as Flynn York strode forward, his spurs jingling with each confident step. He reached the platform and counted out the money, handing it to the auctioneer without taking his eyes off Olivia. She's all yours, the auctioneer said with a lecherous grin. Though I reckon those clothes ain't worth half what you paid. Flynn's expression remained impassive as he extended a hand toward Olivia. Come along, miss. Hesitantly, she placed her trembling hand in his calloused palm. His grip was firm but not painful as he helped her down from the platform. The crowd dispersed, disappointed by the anticlimactic end to the entertainment. When they were a few yards away, Flynn released her hand and removed his duster, draping it over her shoulders. The coat was warm from his body heat, and Olivia clutched it gratefully around herself. Why? She asked, her voice barely audible. Flynn glanced down at her, his expression softening slightly. No one deserves to be sold like cattle. What happens now? Fear crept back into her voice. She had heard stories of men who rescued women from such situations, only to exploit them in other ways. Flynn continued walking, guiding her toward a handsome chestnut mare tethered outside the saloon. Now, Miss Zachary, you'll come to my ranch, get cleaned up and figure out your next steps. She stopped abruptly. How do you know my name? A ghost of a smile crossed his face. The Stagecoach Manifest was published in the newspaper after the attack. Boston merchant Zachary and wife traveling with daughter Olivia. He paused. I'm sorry for your loss. The simple acknowledgement of her grief nearly broke her composure. She swallowed hard, nodding once. I don't know how to repay you, she said softly. Flynn adjusted his hat, looking out toward the mountains beyond the town. Don't worry about that now. He untied his horse and swung effortlessly into the saddle before extending his hand down to her. One day soon, you'll be wearing silk instead of these rags. That'll be payment enough. Bewildered, Olivia stared up at him. Silk? I don't understand. It means you'll have your dignity back, Miss Zachary, he replied, his expression serious. Now, are you coming? With nowhere else to go and no other options, Olivia placed her hand in his once more and allowed him to pull her up behind him on the horse. "Hold on tight," he instructed. As they rode away from Whisper Creek, Olivia couldn't help but wonder what fate awaited her at the ranch of this enigmatic cowboy who had just spent $50 for the clothes on her back. The York Ranch sprawled across the foothills of the Rocky Mountains like a kingdom unto itself. Olivia, exhausted from the hour-long ride, gazed in wonder at the well-maintained buildings, the sturdy corrals filled with horses, and the dozen or so ranch hands who paused in their work to watch their boss return with an unexpected companion. Flynn guided his horse to the main house, a substantial two-story structure built of logs and river stone. It was far more impressive than Olivia had expected to find in this remote territory. "This is yours?" she asked, unable to mask her surprise. "6 years of back-breaking work," he replied, dismounting smoothly before reaching up to help her down. "My father started it. I built it up after he passed." An older woman with silver-streaked black hair emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Her eyes widened at the sight of Olivia. "Mrs. Garcia," Flynn called out, "this is Miss Olivia Zachary. She needs a hot bath, clean clothes, and a proper meal." The woman nodded briskly, her dark eyes taking in Olivia's disheveled state with a mixture of concern and compassion. "Come with me, child. We'll get you fixed right up." Flynn handed Olivia's elbow gently to Mrs. Garcia. "I'll be in the south pasture if you need me. Make sure she has everything she requires." "Of course, Mr. York," Mrs. Garcia responded. To Olivia, she added in a softer tone, "Don't you worry about a thing now. Mr. York is a good man, whatever circumstances brought you here." Olivia glanced back at Flynn, who was already leading his horse toward the stables. "Thank you," she called out. He tipped his hat without turning around. Mrs. Garcia led her inside to a spacious kitchen that smelled of fresh bread and coffee. "Sit, sit," she urged, pulling out a chair at the oak table. "You look ready to collapse." Olivia sank gratefully onto the chair, still wrapped in Flynn's duster. "I don't understand why he helped me," she confessed. Mrs. Garcia busied herself with stoking the fire under a large copper boiler. "Mr. York has his reasons, I'm sure, not one to explain himself much." She paused, studying Olivia's face. "But I've worked for him 5 years now, and I've never known him to do anything without purpose." "He said something strange," Olivia ventured, "about me wearing silk someday." An enigmatic smile crossed Mrs. Garcia's weathered face. "Did he now? Interesting." She didn't elaborate further, instead pouring Olivia a cup of steaming coffee. "Drink this while I prepare your bath. Then we'll see about finding you something that fits until we can get proper clothes made." An hour later, Olivia sat in a deep copper tub, hot water soothing her aching muscles and washing away the grime of her ordeal. Mrs. Garcia had provided soap that smelled of lavender, and for the first time in weeks, Olivia felt human again. The housekeeper had taken away her tattered dress with a promise to burn it. "No sense keeping memories of bad times," she had declared. After her bath, Olivia found a simple cotton dress laid out for her. It was slightly large but clean and whole, a vast improvement over what she had been wearing. Mrs. Garcia helped her comb through her tangled auburn hair, tutting sympathetically over the scratches and bruises that marked Olivia's arms and neck. "Whoever did this to you deserves a special place in hell," the older woman muttered. Olivia remained silent, unwilling to relive the nightmare of the past few weeks just yet. When she was dressed and her hair braided neatly, Mrs. Garcia led her to a small but comfortable bedroom on the second floor. "You can rest here. I'll bring up some food shortly." Left alone, Olivia moved to the window. From this vantage point, she could see much of the ranch, the barn, the corrals, the bunkhouse where she presumed the ranch hands lived. In the distance, she spotted Flynn riding along a fence line with another man, gesturing as they talked. What kind of man was he, this Flynn York who had rescued her from public humiliation and possibly worse? And what did he expect in return? No matter what Mrs. Garcia said about his character, Olivia knew that nothing in this world came without a price. She was still pondering these questions when a light knock sounded at her door. Mrs. Garcia entered bearing a tray laden with a bowl of hearty beef stew, fresh bread, and a glass of milk. "Eat," she encouraged, setting the tray on a small table. "You need your strength." Olivia hadn't realized how famished she was until the aroma of the stew reached her. She ate quickly, almost embarrassed by her hunger. "Mr. York says you're to stay here as long as you need," Mrs. Garcia informed her as she watched Olivia eat. "He's arranged for Dr. Miller to visit tomorrow just to make sure you're all right." Olivia paused, her spoon halfway to her mouth. "That's very kind of him. He also asked me to find out if there's anyone we should contact for you. Family back east, perhaps." The question brought a fresh wave of grief. "No," Olivia answered softly. "My parents were my only family. We were traveling to San Francisco to join my father's business partner." She set down her spoon, appetite suddenly diminished. "I suppose I should write to Mr. Harrington, inform him of what happened." Mrs. Garcia nodded sympathetically. "We can arrange that. For now, though, you should rest. Everything seems clearer after a good night's sleep." After the housekeeper left, Olivia finished her meal and then stretched out on the bed, marveling at how comfortable it felt after weeks of hard ground or, at best, crude pallets in outlaws' camps. Despite her intention to remain vigilant in these unfamiliar surroundings, exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. She woke to early morning sunlight streaming through the window. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was, and then the events of the previous day came flooding back. The auction, Flynn York's unexpected intervention, the journey to his ranch. Sitting up, Olivia noticed fresh clothing laid across a chair near the bed undergarments. A simple blue cotton dress, woolen stockings, and sturdy boots. Someone had entered while she slept, but she had been so deeply unconscious she hadn't heard a thing. After dressing, she ventured downstairs, following the aroma of coffee and bacon to the kitchen. To her surprise, Flynn York sat at the table, nursing a mug of coffee while reviewing papers spread before him. He looked up as she entered, and something flickered in his eyes, approval perhaps at her improved appearance. "Good morning, Miss Zachary. I trust you slept well." "Yes, thank you," she replied, hesitating in the doorway. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please join me, Mrs. Garcia has gone to gather eggs, but there's coffee on the stove." Olivia poured herself a cup before taking the offered seat. Up close, in the clear morning light, she could better assess her rescuer. Flynn York was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps 30, with the weathered complexion of a man who spent most of his time outdoors. His eyes were indeed gray, with flecks of blue that reminded her of mountain stone. A small scar bisected his right eyebrow, and his hands, when they weren't holding his coffee mug, moved with the precise efficiency of someone accustomed to hard work. "I want to thank you properly," Olivia began, cradling her coffee cup. "What you did yesterday," Flynn waved away her gratitude. "No need to dwell on it. Nevertheless," she persisted, "I owe you a debt I'm not sure how to repay." He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Do you have any skills, Miss Zachary? Besides being a merchant's daughter, that is." The question caught her off guard. I'm educated. I can read, write, and keep accounts. I speak French and a little Spanish. I play the piano, though I don't imagine that's of much use here." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You'd be surprised. This isn't quite the uncivilized wilderness you might imagine." Before she could respond, the kitchen door opened and Mrs. Garcia entered, basket of eggs in hand. "Ah, you're up. Good. I'll fix breakfast right away." Flynn gathered his papers, tapping them into a neat stack. "I'll be riding into town today. Dr. Miller will be here around noon." He rose from the table, nodding to Olivia. "We'll talk more about your situation when I return." After he left, Mrs. Garcia set about preparing breakfast, humming softly as she worked. Olivia hesitated, then asked, "Mrs. Garcia, what exactly does Mr. York do? This ranch seems substantial." The housekeeper glanced over her shoulder. "Cattle, mostly. Some horses. But Mr. York's real talent is business. He owns the freight company that serves the mines up north, has investments in Denver, and recently opened the first proper bank in Whisper Creek." She cracked eggs into a bowl, still speaking. "People underestimate him because he dresses and acts like a cowboy, but there's a sharp mind behind that Stetson." This information made Olivia reassess her situation. Flynn York wasn't just some ranch owner with a charitable streak, he was a businessman, perhaps even a wealthy one. Which again raised the question, what did he want with her? As if reading her thoughts, Mrs. Garcia added, "Whatever you're thinking, child, you can ease your mind. Mr. York is many things, but he's not the type to take advantage of a woman in distress." "Then why?" Olivia pressed. "Why help me? Why bring me here?" Mrs. Garcia's expression softened. "That's for him to explain if he chooses. But I will tell you this: Flynn York lost his mother to men not unlike those who had you on that auction block. She was Cherokee, you see, and there were those who didn't consider her fully human." The revelation stunned Olivia into silence. She hadn't noticed any Native American features in Flynn's appearance, but then again, she hadn't been looking for them. "His father raised him to respect all people," Mrs. Garcia continued, setting a plate of eggs and bacon before Olivia, "and to never walk past suffering he could prevent." Olivia picked up her fork, mind whirling with this new information. "Thank you for telling me. Just don't mention I did," Mrs. Garcia warned with a wink. "Mr. York is a private man. Now eat up. Dr. Miller can be quite stern about patients who don't take care of themselves." True to Flynn's word, Dr. Miller arrived shortly after noon, a portly, white-bearded gentleman with kind eyes and efficient hands. He examined Olivia thoroughly, but respectfully, clucking his tongue at the bruises and the state of her malnourished body. "Bed rest, good food, and time," he prescribed, packing his instruments back into his leather bag. "You're strong, young lady, but you've been through an ordeal. Don't rush your recovery." After he left, Olivia found herself at loose ends. Mrs. Garcia had chores to attend to, and without clear direction on what she was allowed to do, Olivia felt awkward wandering the house. Eventually, she discovered a small library off the main sitting room, a cozy space with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a worn leather armchair, and a window seat overlooking the mountains. She was deep into a volume of Emerson's essays when the sound of horses approaching drew her attention. Through the window, she saw Flynn returning, accompanied by a wagon driven by a young woman. Curious, Olivia set aside her book and made her way to the front door. Mrs. Garcia was already there, greeting the visitors. The young woman, blonde and petite with a friendly smile, was introduced as Harriet Miller, the doctor's daughter and owner of Whisper Creek's only dress shop. "Miss Zachary," Flynn said, tipping his hat to Olivia, "Miss Miller has brought some things I thought you might need." Harriet stepped forward, hand extended. "Pleased to meet you, Miss Zachary. Mr. York commissioned quite a wardrobe for you. I've brought what I had ready-made that might fit, and I'll take measurements for the rest." Olivia looked from Harriet to Flynn in confusion. "A wardrobe?" "It's already arranged," Flynn interrupted smoothly. "Mrs. Garcia will help you with the fittings. I've got business in the barn." With that, he strode away, leaving Olivia bewildered once again by his generosity. Harriet, unfazed by Olivia's surprise, linked arms with her. "Come along. Let's see what we've got that suits you." For the next hour, Olivia found herself swept up in a whirlwind of fabrics, measurements, and feminine chatter. Harriet was a natural conversationalist, filling the silence with town news and fashion observations without pressing Olivia for details of her own story. The ready-made garments included 3 calico work dresses, a navy blue walking dress, undergarments, nightgowns, and even a pair of riding breeches discreetly hidden at the bottom of the trunk. "Mr. York said you'd need practical clothing for ranch life," Harriet explained when Olivia raised an eyebrow at the breeches. "But he also ordered materials for more formal attire." She unfolded a length of emerald green silk that shimmered in the light. "This will be for an evening dress once I've finished it, and there's a burgundy wool for a traveling suit." "This is too much," Olivia protested. "I can't accept all this." Mrs. Garcia, who had been helping with the fittings, made a dismissive noise. "Of course you can. Mr. York wouldn't have ordered it if he didn't want you to have it." "But why?" Olivia asked, the question that had been burning in her mind since yesterday finally bursting forth. "Why is he doing this? What does he expect from me?" Harriet looked uncomfortable, but Mrs. Garcia met Olivia's gaze steadily. "That's something you'll have to ask him directly. But if you're worried about improper expectations, don't be. Whatever his reasons, they're honorable." Later, after Harriet had departed with promises to return in a week with the completed garments, Olivia changed into one of the new calico dresses. It fit well, the fabric soft against her skin after so long in the same dirty clothes. She brushed out her hair, noticing how it had begun to regain some of its natural luster after just one proper washing. A knock at her bedroom door startled her. "Miss Zachary," Flynn's voice. "When you're ready, I'd like to speak with you in my study." "I'll be right there," she called back, quickly braiding her hair. Flynn's study was adjacent to the library she had discovered earlier. It was a masculine space with a large oak desk, leather-bound ledgers on shelves, and a stone fireplace where a small fire crackled against the evening chill. Maps of the territory adorned one wall, marking properties, water rights, and cattle trails. Flynn stood when she entered, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "Please sit down. Would you like some tea? Mrs. Garcia just brought a fresh pot." "Yes, thank you." Olivia accepted the offered cup, using the moment to gather her courage. As he returned to his seat, she decided to speak directly. "Mr. York, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but I need to understand why." He leaned back in his chair, regarding her thoughtfully. "Fair enough." He seemed to choose his words carefully before continuing. "When I saw you on that auction block, I saw someone who had been wronged by a system that allows people to be treated as property. I couldn't walk away. But the clothes, the doctor, bringing Miss Miller here with an entire wardrobe. That goes well beyond simple charity." Flynn nodded, acknowledging the point. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Zachary, a business arrangement, if you will." Olivia tensed, uncertain where this was heading. "I need someone to help manage the administrative side of my businesses," he continued. "Someone educated, who can keep books, handle correspondence, and eventually represent my interests in certain circles. Based on what you've told me about your background, you might be suited to such a position." Of all the things Olivia had imagined he might say, this was not among them. "You want me to work for you?" "Yes. With fair compensation, of course. You'd continue to live here at the ranch for now, where it's safe and comfortable, but the position would likely require travel to Denver and perhaps even San Francisco in the future. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. You said your father was a merchant. I imagine you learned something of business from him. Olivia nodded slowly. I did. He believed women should understand finance as well as men. I often helped with his ledgers and correspondence. Then this could be mutually beneficial. You need a new start after your ordeal, and I need someone with your skills. Flynn paused, studying her reaction. You'd be free to decline, of course. If you prefer, I can arrange passage to San Francisco so you can contact your father's business partner, as you mentioned to Mrs. Garcia. The offer was unexpected but not unwelcome. Olivia had been dreading the thought of arriving in San Francisco alone, throwing herself on the mercy of a man she barely knew. Here was an alternative that offered independence, purpose, and security. May I have some time to consider? She asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. Flynn rose, signaling the end of their conversation. In the meantime, consider yourself a guest here. Feel free to explore the ranch, though I'd advise against wandering too far alone until you're more familiar with the territory. As Olivia stood to leave, another question occurred to her. Mr. York, when you bought me, she faltered over the crude term but pressed on. You said something about silk, that I would wear it someday. What did you mean? A ghost of a smile crossed his face. My mother used to say that silk was more than just a fabric, it was a symbol of dignity and self-determination, something no one could take from you once you truly owned it. He gestured to the door. I meant that one day you would stand on your own feet again, Miss Zachary, with your head held high. The actual silk dress Miss Miller is making is just a tangible representation of that promise. The answer was both simpler and more profound than Olivia had expected. She nodded, strangely moved. Thank you for explaining. You're welcome. Good night, Miss Zachary. Good night, Mr. York. As April turned to May, Olivia settled into a routine at the York Ranch. After careful consideration, she had accepted Flynn's business proposition, starting with organizing his considerable collection of ledgers and correspondence. The work was familiar and satisfying, giving her days purpose and structure while her body continued to heal from her ordeal. Flynn proved to be a fair and surprisingly patient employer. He explained his various business interests clearly, answered her questions without condescension, and seemed genuinely appreciative of her suggestions for improving his record-keeping systems. You have a good head for business, he remarked one afternoon as they reviewed quarterly reports from his freight company. Your father taught you well. Olivia felt a pang at the mention of her father, but it was less sharp than before. He always said that understanding money was the key to independence. Flynn nodded thoughtfully. A wise man. Too many women are left vulnerable because they've been kept ignorant of financial matters. Their working relationship gradually developed into something approaching friendship. Flynn was still reserved, but as the weeks passed, Olivia began to see glimpses of the man behind the stoic facade. He had a dry sense of humor that emerged unexpectedly in conversation. He was well-read, often discussing books with her when they crossed paths in the library in the evenings. And she discovered that he was unfailingly kind to those who worked for him, from Mrs. Garcia to the youngest stable boy. One morning in late May, Olivia was at her desk in the corner of Flynn's study when he entered with an unusual request. You ride, Miss Zachary? He asked, removing his hat as he crossed to his desk. She looked up from the correspondence she was sorting. I learned as a girl, though it's been some years. Would you care to accompany me this afternoon? There's something I'd like to show you on the property. Curious, Olivia agreed, and after lunch she changed into the riding breeches and jacket Harriet had provided. When she emerged from the house, Flynn was waiting with two saddled horses, his own chestnut mare and a gentle-looking gray gelding. "This is Smoke," Flynn said, helping her mount. "He's steady and calm, perfect for getting reacquainted with riding." Olivia settled into the saddle, memories of childhood lessons returning as her body adjusted to the horse's movement. Flynn mounted his mare with the easy grace of a man who had spent most of his life on horseback, and they set off at a leisurely pace. The afternoon was glorious, the Rocky Mountains rising majestically against a cloudless blue sky. Spring had transformed the landscape, painting the foothills with wildflowers and fresh green growth. As they rode, Flynn pointed out landmarks and boundaries, giving Olivia a better understanding of the ranch's scope. "You own all this?" she asked, impressed by the vastness of his holdings. "Most of it," he replied. "Some is leased from the government, some purchased from settlers who couldn't make a go of it." He guided his horse around a rocky outcropping. "My father started with just 50 acres and a dream. He'd be proud to see what it's become." "When did he pass?" Olivia asked softly. 8 years ago. Pneumonia." Flynn's expression remained neutral, but Olivia had learned to read the subtle shifts in his tone. There was old grief there, well managed but still present. "I was 22, fresh out of college back east, planning to practice law in Denver." This was new information. "You were educated as a lawyer," he nodded. "Yale. My father insisted. Said a half-Cherokee boy would need every advantage he could get in this world." A faint smile crossed his face. He wasn't wrong. Olivia considered this revelation. It explained Flynn's articulate speech, his business acumen, and the extensive library in his home. "But you didn't practice law." "No. After he died, I came back to save the ranch, found I had a knack for it and for other ventures." He urged his horse forward. "We're almost there." They crested a small rise, and Olivia gasped at the view that spread before them. A pristine lake nestled in a natural bowl of land, its surface reflecting the mountains like a mirror. Cottonwood trees lined one shore, their leaves shimmering silver green in the breeze. Flynn dismounted and tied his horse to a nearby pine before coming around to help Olivia down. His hands were strong and steady at her waist, and for a moment after her feet touched the ground, neither of them moved. Olivia became acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth of his hands through the fabric of her riding jacket. Flynn stepped back first, clearing his throat. "My mother's people called this place Silent Water. It's the heart of the ranch in many ways. The source that feeds the streams that water our land." He led her to a flat rock overlooking the lake, and they sat side by side, enjoying the tranquil scene. A pair of eagles soared overhead, riding thermal currents with barely a wingbeat. "It's beautiful," Olivia said softly. "Thank you for showing me." Flynn seemed content with the silence that followed, but Olivia found herself wanting to know more about this complex man who had saved her. "Mr. York, Flynn," he interrupted gently. "I think after all this time you might call me Flynn," she smiled. "Flynn." "And you should call me Olivia." She hesitated, then pressed on. "May I ask you something personal?" He nodded, his gray eyes watchful. "Mrs. Garcia mentioned that your mother, that something happened to her." Flynn's expression tightened almost imperceptibly, but he answered evenly. "She was taken by raiders when I was 5, sold to a man in Texas." His jaw clenched. "My father spent 2 years searching for her. When he finally found her, she was barely alive. The man who had bought her had treated her like an animal." Olivia's heart ached at the pain evident in his voice. "I'm so sorry." She recovered, physically at least, lived another 15 years, but something in her had broken. He picked up a small stone, turning it over in his fingers. "That's why I couldn't just stand by when I saw you on that platform. No human being should be bought and sold like property." Impulsively, Olivia reached out and covered his hand with hers. "Thank you for telling me, and for what you did that day." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, a recognition, perhaps, of shared understanding. For a breathless moment, Olivia thought he might lean closer, but instead, Flynn gently squeezed her hand before releasing it. "We should head back," he said, rising to his feet. "Mrs. Garcia will have dinner ready soon." The ride back to the ranch was quieter, both of them lost in thought. But Olivia felt that something significant had changed. A trust had been established, a deeper connection formed through the sharing of painful truths. That evening, as she readied herself for bed, Olivia caught her reflection in the mirror and was startled by what she saw. The gaunt, frightened woman who had arrived at the ranch nearly 2 months ago was gone. In her place stood someone healthier, stronger, with clear eyes and color in her cheeks. Someone who was beginning to look toward the future rather than dwelling on the past. And if that future increasingly featured thoughts of a certain gray-eyed rancher, well, that was something to examine another day. June brought scorching heat to the Colorado territory, transforming the landscape into a palette of golds and browns. The ranch bustled with activity as cattle were moved to higher pastures and preparations began for a small cattle drive to Denver. Olivia had fully embraced her role as Flynn's business manager. She had reorganized his filing system, streamlined his correspondence, and even begun representing him in meetings with local merchants. Her confidence grew with each successful negotiation, each problem solved. "You're a natural," Flynn told her after she secured a more favorable contract with a feed supplier. "Better than any lawyer I could hire." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. Olivia had been fighting a losing battle against her growing feelings for Flynn York. It wasn't just gratitude anymore, though she would always be thankful for his intervention that day in Whisper Creek. It was admiration for his integrity, respect for his intelligence, and an increasingly distracting awareness of him as a man. She found her gaze lingering on the breadth of his shoulders when he rode out each morning, the way his hands moved with precise grace whether he was signing documents or mending tack, the rare but transformative effect of his genuine smile. But Flynn maintained a careful distance. He was unfailingly polite, even friendly, but never crossed the line into anything that might be construed as courtship. Olivia told herself it was for the best. She worked for him, lived under his roof. Any romantic entanglement would only complicate matters. Still, there were moments a look held too long across the dinner table, his hand steadying her elbow as they walked together, the quiet companionship of evenings in the library that made her wonder if perhaps he felt it too, this unacknowledged current between them. One particularly hot afternoon, Olivia was working in the study when Flynn entered, looking uncharacteristically agitated. "Is something wrong?" she asked, setting aside her ledger. "Telegram from Denver," he replied, handing her the yellow paper. "The bank is calling in their note on the freight company. I need to go to Denver immediately to sort it out." Olivia scanned the telegram, frowning at the terse language. "This makes no sense. The loan isn't due for another 6 months and all payments have been made on time." "Exactly. Something's not right." Flynn ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "I'll need all the documentation on the loan agreement and the profit statements from the last quarter." Olivia was already moving to the filing cabinet. "I'll gather everything you need. When will you leave?" "First light tomorrow. It's a 3-day ride." She hesitated, then said firmly, "I should come with you." Flynn looked up sharply. "To Denver?" "Yes." I know these files better than anyone, and if there's negotiation to be done with the bank, two voices are better than one." She met his gaze steadily. "Besides, you hired me to help manage your business affairs. This certainly qualifies." For a moment she thought he would refuse, then his expression softened into something like admiration. "You're right, pack your things. We'll take the small wagon rather than riding. It'll be slower but more comfortable for you. And better for transporting all these documents," Olivia added practically, though inside she was a jumble of excitement and nerves at the prospect of traveling alone with Flynn for 6 days. The journey to Denver proved both more arduous and more enjoyable than Olivia had anticipated. The heat was relentless, the roads dusty and rutted. Yet there was a freedom in leaving the ranch behind, in seeing new vistas as they traveled eastward out of the mountains toward the growing city of Denver. They camped under the stars each night, Flynn insisting that Olivia take the small tent while he slept beside the fire. Their conversations flowed more easily away from the ranch, ranging from business matters to philosophy to childhood memories. Olivia found herself laughing more than she had in months, particularly when Flynn shared stories of his early, disastrous attempts at ranching. "I once tried to rope a steer and somehow ended up dragging myself through a mud hole instead," he confessed, eyes crinkling with mirth at the memory. "My father laughed so hard he had to sit down." On the third evening, as they made camp in a grove of cottonwoods near a small stream, Olivia noticed Flynn watching her with an odd expression as she prepared their simple meal. "What is it?" she asked, self-consciously tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You've changed," he said softly. "Since that first day," Olivia smiled, stirring the pot of beans. "I should hope so. I was half-starved and terrified." "No, it's more than that." Flynn moved closer, taking the wooden spoon from her hand and setting it aside. "You found yourself again. Your strength, your purpose." His proximity sent her heart racing. "I had help," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Flynn's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. For one breathless moment, Olivia thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, returning to his place by the fire. "We should reach Denver by noon tomorrow," he said, his tone deliberately casual. "I've sent word ahead to reserve rooms at the Windsor Hotel." Olivia busied herself with the food, trying to hide her disappointment. "Have you decided how to approach the bank?" And just like that, the moment was gone, replaced by practical discussion of their strategy for the coming confrontation. Denver in 1876 was a city in transition, part frontier town, part aspiring metropolis. Broad streets lined with a mix of wooden structures and ambitious brick buildings bustled with activity. The recent discovery of silver in the mountains had brought an influx of fortune seekers, investors, and the inevitable camp followers that accompanied such booms. The Windsor Hotel, where Flynn had reserved rooms, was the finest establishment in the city, 4 stories of red brick, with elegant furnishings and modern conveniences like gas lighting and indoor plumbing. Olivia, dusty from the road and wearing one of her practical calico dresses, felt distinctly out of place as Flynn escorted her through the grand lobby. "Mr. York," the hotel manager hurried forward, hand extended. "A pleasure to see you again, sir. Your rooms are ready, and I've arranged for hot water to be sent up immediately." Flynn shook the man's hand. "Thank you, Peterson. This is Miss Zachary, my business associate. She'll require whatever assistance she needs." The manager bowed slightly to Olivia. "Of course, Miss Zachary. Welcome to the Windsor." After settling into her room, a luxurious space with a 4-poster bed, velvet drapes, and a private bathing chamber, Olivia indulged in a proper hot bath. The grime of travel washed away, she faced a new dilemma: what to wear to the bank meeting. She had brought her navy walking dress, which was respectable enough, but hardly made the impression of a serious businesswoman. A knock at her door interrupted her deliberations. Opening it, she found a bellboy holding a large box tied with string. "Delivery for you, Miss Zachary," he announced, handing it to her. Inside, Olivia found the emerald silk dress Harriet had been making for her, along with matching shoes, gloves, and a note in Flynn's bold handwriting. "For tomorrow's meeting. The silk I promised." Tears pricked her eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. The dress was elegant but conservative, perfect for a business setting yet undeniably beautiful. Flynn had remembered his promise from that first day, and in providing this dress now, he was sending a clear message. She would face the bank not as a victim or a charity case, but as his equal, draped in the silk that symbolized her restored dignity. The following morning, Olivia dressed with care, arranging her auburn hair in a sophisticated chignon and donning the silk dress that fit as if it had been made for her, which, of course, it had been. When she met Flynn in the hotel lobby, his momentary speechlessness was all the confirmation she needed that the effect was as powerful as she'd hoped. "You look," he began, then seemed to reconsider whatever he'd been about to say. "Very professional. The bankers won't know what hit them." Olivia smiled, accepting his arm as they exited the hotel. "That's rather the point, isn't it?" The First Bank of Denver occupied an imposing stone building on Larimer Street. Inside, marble floors and mahogany counters conveyed stability and wealth. Flynn gave his name to a teller, who disappeared into a back office and returned moments later with a portly, balding man in an expensive suit. "Mr. York," the man greeted, extending his hand. "Walter Simmons, bank president, please come to my office." Simmons barely acknowledged Olivia until they were seated in his richly appointed office, and Flynn introduced her formally. "Miss Zachary is my business manager and fully authorized to discuss all aspects of our account," Flynn stated, his tone leaving no room for argument. Simmons raised his eyebrows but nodded curtly. "Very well. As our telegram indicated, the bank is calling in the note on your freight company. We require full payment within 30 days. "On what grounds?" Flynn asked calmly. "The loan agreement clearly states a term of 3 years, with 18 months still remaining." Simmons shuffled papers on his desk. "Clause 23 gives the bank discretion to call in the note if circumstances change significantly. We believe they have." Olivia, who had memorized the loan document on the journey, spoke up. "Clause 23 specifically refers to changes that materially affect the borrower's ability to repay. Mr. York's businesses have never been more profitable, as your own bank statements should confirm." Simmons looked taken aback by her precise knowledge and clear delivery. "Nevertheless, the board has made its decision." "Based on what information?" Flynn pressed. The banker's discomfort was becoming evident. "I'm not at liberty to discuss board deliberations." Olivia opened her portfolio, extracting several documents. "Perhaps this will clarify matters. We've brought financial statements demonstrating that the freight company's revenue has increased by 28% in the past quarter alone. Additionally, Mr. York has substantial collateral in real estate and livestock that far exceeds the value of the loan." She slid the papers across the desk, her emerald silk rustling softly with the movement. Simmons glanced at the documents but didn't pick them up. "The decision stands," he insisted, though with less conviction than before. Flynn leaned forward, his expression hardening. "Mr. Simmons, let's be frank. This sudden change in position seems suspicious, particularly given our perfect payment record and the company's growth. I wonder if someone has been exerting influence on your board." A flicker of unease crossed Simmons' face. "What are you suggesting?" "Only that it would be a shame if we were forced to take our considerable business elsewhere," Flynn replied smoothly. "Or if rumors began circulating about the bank's arbitrary treatment of successful clients." "Are you threatening me, Mr. York?" Simmons bristled. "Not at all," Olivia interjected, her voice calm but firm. "We're simply pointing out that this decision appears contrary to sound banking practices and your own financial interests. It raises questions about whether external factors are at play." Simmons fidgeted with his watch chain. "What external factors could possibly—" "Harrison Blackwell," Flynn interrupted. "Has he approached your board recently?" The banker's startled expression confirmed Flynn's suspicion before he could deny it. Blackwell was a Denver businessman known for aggressive, sometimes unscrupulous tactics. He had tried to buy Flynn's freight company the previous year and been firmly rebuffed. "Mr. Blackwell is a valued customer," Simmons said carefully, "who would very much like to see me forced to sell my company at a distressed price," Flynn finished. "Which is exactly what would happen if you call in this note without cause." Olivia had been watching Simmons closely during this exchange. His discomfort suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with the situation. She decided to offer him a way out. "Mr. Simmons," she said gently, "I understand your position is difficult, but surely the bank's reputation for fair dealing is worth more than appeasing one powerful client. Perhaps you could take our financial statements to your board and recommend reconsidering their decision." Simmons hesitated, then sighed heavily. "I can present the information at tomorrow's meeting. That's all I can promise." Flynn nodded, standing to indicate the meeting was concluded. "That's fair. We'll await the board's reconsideration." As they prepared to leave, he added casually, "By the way, I'll be meeting with representatives from the Second National Bank this afternoon. Purely exploratory, of course." The implication was clear. If First Bank persisted in this course, Flynn would take his substantial business elsewhere. Simmons' expression suggested the message had been received. Outside the bank, Olivia exhaled slowly, releasing tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Do you really think Blackwell is behind this?" Flynn nodded grimly as they walked back toward the hotel. "He's been trying to gain control of the shipping routes to the silver mines for years. My company is the main obstacle to his monopoly." He glanced down at her. "You were magnificent in there, by the way." Simmons didn't know what hit him. Olivia felt a flush of pleasure at the praise. "The silk helped," she said with a smile, touching the rich fabric of her dress. "It's difficult to dismiss someone wearing something so fine." "It's not the silk," Flynn replied seriously. "It's the woman wearing it. You've become quite formidable, Olivia Zachary." Their eyes met, and that now familiar current of awareness passed between them. This time, neither looked away. "Flynn," Olivia began hesitantly. "Mr. York." The shout from across the street interrupted whatever she had been about to say. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a neatly trimmed beard was approaching them, his expression thunderous. "I thought that was you." Flynn's posture stiffened, but his voice remained calm. "Blackwell, what a coincidence." Harrison Blackwell stopped before them, his expensive suit and gold watch chain marking him as a man of wealth and influence. His gaze swept dismissively over Olivia before returning to Flynn. "Not at all. Denver's a small town when you move in the right circles." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "I understand you had a meeting at the bank this morning. Trouble with your loans." "Nothing that can't be resolved," Flynn replied evenly. "Miss Zachary, allow me to introduce Harrison Blackwell. Blackwell, this is Miss Olivia Zachary, my business manager." Blackwell barely acknowledged her with a nod. "A woman business manager? How progressive of you, York." Olivia lifted her chin, meeting his condescending gaze without flinching. "Mr. Blackwell, I've heard much about you." "All good, I hope," he said with a smirk. "Hardly," she replied sweetly, earning a surprised chuckle from Flynn. Blackwell's expression hardened. "You should teach your employee better manners, York. Miss Zachary speaks for herself," Flynn countered. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have other appointments." Blackwell stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This isn't over, York. That freight company will be mine one way or another. Consider the bank just my opening move." "Is that a threat?" Flynn asked quietly. "A promise." Blackwell tipped his hat with mock politeness. "Miss Zachary, enjoy your stay in Denver. I suspect it will be brief." As he walked away, Olivia turned to Flynn. Charming man, Flynn's expression was grim and dangerous. If he's resorting to pressuring the bank, he's getting desperate. What will we do if the bank doesn't reconsider? "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Flynn offered his arm, which she took gratefully. "For now, I believe I promised you lunch at Denver's finest restaurant." The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of meetings. True to his word, Flynn arranged consultations with other banks in Denver, securing preliminary agreements for financing should First Bank persist in calling in the note. Olivia accompanied him to each meeting, her confidence growing with every successful negotiation. When they weren't in meetings, Flynn showed her the elegant shops on 16th Street, the newly constructed Opera House, the territorial offices where Colorado's bid for statehood was being processed. "By the end of summer, this will be the state capital," Flynn told her as they walked along the tree-lined avenues. "Everything's changing so quickly." On the third day, a message arrived from Simmons at the First Bank. The board had reconsidered their position and would honor the original terms of the loan agreement. Flynn read the note with satisfaction. "It seems your diplomacy worked better than my threats," he told Olivia over breakfast in the hotel dining room. "We've won this round. For now," Olivia cautioned. "Blackwell doesn't strike me as the type to give up easily." Flynn nodded thoughtfully. "No, he isn't. But we've bought ourselves time." He set down his coffee cup. "Which brings me to another matter. How would you feel about staying in Denver a few more days?" Olivia looked up in surprise. "What for?" "2 reasons. First, to meet with some potential new clients for the freight company, and second—" He hesitated, an unusual hint of uncertainty crossing his features. "There's a benefit at the Opera House tomorrow night, for the new children's hospital. I thought perhaps you might accompany me." The invitation caught Olivia off guard. This wasn't a business meeting, it was a social engagement. Almost like a courtship gesture. "I'd be delighted," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray her sudden flutter of excitement. "Though I'm not sure I have appropriate attire for an Opera House benefit." Flynn smiled, relaxing visibly at her acceptance. "I'm sure we can find something suitable. Denver has some excellent shops now." That afternoon, Flynn escorted her to Madame Renault's, an exclusive dressmaker's shop on 16th Street. Olivia protested at the extravagance, but Flynn was insistent. "Consider it a business expense," he said as they entered the elegant boutique. "You're representing the York enterprises in high society now." Madame Renault herself attended to them, her French accent lending authority to her fashion pronouncements. After studying Olivia critically, she disappeared into the back of the shop and returned with a creation that made Olivia gasp: a ball gown of midnight blue silk with delicate silver embroidery at the bodice and hem. It was the most beautiful garment Olivia had ever seen. "This arrived from Paris last week," Madame explained. "It will require only minor adjustments for Mademoiselle's figure." The price was exorbitant, but Flynn didn't bat an eye as he authorized the purchase along with all necessary accessories. Olivia felt simultaneously thrilled and uncomfortable with his generosity. "Flynn, this is too much," she protested quietly as they left the shop with promises that the altered gown would be delivered to the hotel the following afternoon. First the emerald dress, now this. Flynn stopped, turning to face her on the busy sidewalk. "Olivia, you know what gives me the most satisfaction? Not the ranch, not the businesses, it's seeing you become the woman you were always meant to be." His expression softened. "You deserve beautiful things. You deserve to walk into that opera house tomorrow night knowing you belong there as much as anyone." His words touched something deep inside her, a wound she hadn't realized was still healing. All her life, Olivia had been defined by her relationship to others. Daughter, potential wife, victim, charity case. Flynn was the first person who seemed to see her simply as herself, with her own worth independent of circumstance. "Thank you," she said simply. Unable to articulate the complex emotions his words had stirred, Flynn nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Come on. There's one more place I want to show you before dinner." He led her to a small park overlooking Cherry Creek, where benches provided a peaceful vantage point for watching the rushing water. They sat side by side, comfortable in the momentary silence. "When I first came to Denver," Flynn said eventually, "this was where I would come to think. To decide what kind of man I wanted to be." Olivia watched his profile as he gazed at the water. "And what did you decide?" "That I wanted to build something lasting, something meaningful." He turned to look at her, his gray eyes serious. "The ranch, the businesses, they're not just about making money. They're about creating a legacy that stands for something good." "I think you've succeeded," Olivia said softly. "What you've built is remarkable." Flynn shook his head slightly. "It's not enough, not yet." He seemed on the verge of saying more, but instead stood and offered her his hand. "We should get back. I've arranged dinner at the hotel." That night, alone in her luxurious hotel room, Olivia found herself unable to sleep. Her mind kept returning to Flynn, the intensity in his eyes when he spoke of his ambitions, the careful way he guided her through the city, the unspoken something that hovered between them. She had tried to maintain professional distance, to view him solely as her employer and benefactor. But the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. She was falling in love with Flynn York. And tomorrow night, she would attend a grand social event on his arm, wearing a gown fit for a princess. What that might mean for their future, she couldn't guess. But for the first time since that terrible day on the auction platform, Olivia allowed herself to hope for something more than mere survival. The opera house glittered with gaslight and crystal chandeliers, the cream of Denver society turned out in their finest for the benefit. Ladies in silks and satins, gentlemen in formal black and white, mingled in the grand foyer, their voices creating a pleasant buzz of conversation punctuated by occasional laughter. Olivia, descending the marble staircase on Flynn's arm, felt a moment of intense self-consciousness as several heads turned in their direction. The midnight blue gown was even more stunning after Madame Renault's adjustments, fitting her perfectly and shimmering with subtle iridescence as she moved. Her hair was arranged in an elegant updo, adorned with a simple silver comb that Flynn had presented to her just before they left the hotel. "Everyone is staring," she whispered to Flynn. "Of course they are," he replied, his voice low and warm near her ear. "You're the most beautiful woman in the room." The compliment sent a flush of pleasure to her cheeks. Flynn himself cut an imposing figure in his formal attire, the black tailcoat and white waistcoat, emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his frame. Together they made a striking couple. A distinguished-looking older gentleman approached them, his smile welcoming. "Flynn York, I didn't expect to see you at one of these society affairs." Flynn shook the man's hand warmly. "Judge Patterson, good to see you. May I present Miss Olivia Zachary?" "Olivia, this is Judge William Patterson of the Territorial Court." The introductions continued as Flynn guided her through the crowd. Olivia met bankers, merchants, territorial officials, and their wives, all seemingly pleased to make her acquaintance. She quickly realized that Flynn was held in high esteem by Denver's elite, despite his deliberate avoidance of most social functions. "Mr. York is too busy building the territory to waste time at our little gatherings," explained Mrs. Patterson, a kindly woman with silver hair. "We're delighted he's finally found someone worth making an exception for." The implication was clear, and Olivia didn't know how to respond. Before she could form a reply, a voice cut through the pleasant atmosphere. Well, the cowboy cleans up nicely." Harrison Blackwell stood before them, impeccably dressed, a beautiful blonde woman on his arm. His smile was cold as he assessed Olivia. And Miss Zachary, quite transformed from yesterday, almost unrecognizable. "Mr. Blackwell," Flynn acknowledged with a nod. "I wasn't aware you supported the Children's Hospital." "Oh, I support many charitable causes. It's part of being a civic leader." Blackwell gestured to his companion. "Allow me to present Miss Deanna Reynolds, recently of San Francisco." The blonde offered a gloved hand and a practiced smile. Charmed, I'm sure. Introductions complete, an awkward silence fell. Olivia, determined not to let Blackwell ruin the evening, spoke up. "Miss Reynolds, are you enjoying Denver? I understand San Francisco is quite magnificent." "Denver has its rustic charm," Deanna replied, her tone making it clear she found the city provincial. "Though I confess I miss the opera and the true society functions of San Francisco." "Perhaps you should return there," Flynn suggested mildly. Blackwell's eyes narrowed at the subtle insult. "Miss Reynolds has kindly agreed to stay in Denver indefinitely. As my fiancée." "Congratulations," Olivia said quickly before Flynn could respond. "When is the happy day?" "We haven't set a date," Deanna answered, admiring the substantial diamond on her left hand. "Harrison has so many business matters to conclude first." "Indeed," Blackwell agreed, his gaze locking with Flynn's. "Very important business matters, but they're progressing nicely." Flynn's expression revealed nothing. Business can be unpredictable. "Best not to make promises you can't keep, Blackwell." The undercurrent of hostility was unmistakable. Olivia placed her hand lightly on Flynn's arm. "I believe they are about to begin seating for the performance, Flynn. We should find our places." With a nod of farewell to Blackwell and his fiancée, they moved toward the auditorium entrance. Once out of earshot, Olivia murmured, "He seems determined to provoke you." "It's his way," Flynn replied, his voice tight. "Blackwell believes intimidation is the key to success." "Is that why he was talking about business matters to conclude? Is he still trying to force you to sell the freight company?" Flynn guided her to their seats, an excellent box with a perfect view of the stage. "Yes, but it's more than that now. I've heard rumors he's been buying up property all along Cherry Creek, including parcels adjacent to my freight company headquarters." "What would he want with those?" "Control." Flynn's expression was grim. "If he owns the surrounding land, he can restrict access, make operations difficult." "It's another form of pressure." Before Olivia could respond, the lights dimmed and the orchestra began the overture. The performance selections from Italian operas performed by a touring company was magnificent, but Olivia found her attention divided between the stage and the man beside her. Flynn seemed absorbed in the music, his strong profile illuminated by the soft glow from the stage. Once, catching her watching him, he smiled and took her hand, holding it gently throughout the remainder of the first act. During the intermission, they strolled in the grand foyer, accepting introductions and engaging in pleasant conversation with Denver's elite. Olivia was surprised by how natural it felt to be by Flynn's side in this social setting, as if they had been partners for years rather than months. As they returned to their seats for the second half, Flynn said quietly, "You're a natural at this, you know. Everyone is charmed by you." Olivia smiled. "I had a good upbringing. My parents ensured I knew how to navigate society, even if Boston society differs somewhat from Denver's." "It's more than good manners," Flynn insisted. "You have a genuine way with people. They respond to your authenticity." The compliment warmed her. "Thank you, though I suspect much of their interest stems from curiosity about the woman accompanying the elusive Flynn York to a social function." A hint of a smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Perhaps, though I doubt I'll remain elusive if attending events means having you on my arm." The implication sent a flutter through her chest, but before she could respond, the lights dimmed again for the second act. After the performance concluded, they joined other patrons at a reception in the Opera House's elegant ballroom. Champagne flowed freely as musicians played soft waltzes in the background. Some couples were already dancing, gliding across the polished floor in graceful patterns. "Would you care to dance?" Flynn asked, offering his hand. Olivia hesitated. "It's been quite some time since I've waltzed." "I'll lead," he promised with a smile that made her heart skip. "Trust me." And she did, allowing him to guide her onto the dance floor and into the flowing rhythm of the waltz. Flynn proved to be an excellent dancer, his movements sure and controlled as he led her through the steps. They fit together perfectly, his hand warm and steady at her waist, hers resting lightly on his shoulder. "Another hidden talent," Olivia remarked as they moved in harmony with the music. "Where did a rancher learn to waltz so well?" "Yale," he replied with a wry smile. Social graces were considered as important as academic achievement, though I confess I never enjoyed dancing until this moment. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. For the duration of the waltz, the crowded ballroom seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them, moving together in a private world created by music and shared emotion. When the dance ended, Flynn didn't immediately release her. "Olivia," he said softly. York." Blackwell's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "A word." Flynn's expression hardened, but he nodded curtly. "Excuse us for a moment," he said to Olivia. "I won't be long." As the men moved to a quieter corner of the ballroom, Olivia found herself approached by Deanna Reynolds. "Miss Zachary," the blonde said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "What a lovely gown, so unique for Denver." "Thank you," Olivia replied politely. "Yours is beautiful as well," Deanna preened, smoothing the satin of her rose-colored dress. "Paris, of course. Though I'm surprised to see you here. I understood you were merely Mr. York's employee." The condescension in her tone was unmistakable. Olivia maintained her composure, refusing to rise to the bait. "Mr. York and I work closely together on his business ventures." "How fascinating," Deanna drawled, clearly not finding it fascinating at all. "Though I should warn you, not for your sake, of course, but for his, that certain rumors are beginning to circulate." Olivia's spine stiffened. "What rumors?" "Oh, nothing specific. Just whispers about a mysterious woman who appeared suddenly in Mr. York's life." Deanna examined her gloved hand with exaggerated interest. "A woman with no family, no connections, living under his roof, working for him in a capacity that seems rather fluid." The implication was clear and deliberately insulting. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her voice level. "I assure you, Miss Reynolds, my position with Mr. York is entirely professional." Of course, Deanna agreed with false sympathy, but you know how people talk. Especially when a man of his mixed heritage begins appearing in society with an unknown woman. Anger flashed through Olivia at the casual bigotry. Mr. York is one of the most respected businessmen in the territory. His heritage is a source of strength, not shame. Deanna raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. How progressive of you, though I wonder if you'd be so quick to defend him if you weren't dependent on his charity. It isn't charity, Olivia replied firmly, and I suggest you direct your concerns about propriety toward your own situation, Miss Reynolds. I understand engagements in San Francisco society typically last no more than 3 months, yet you seem in no hurry to formalize your arrangement with Mr. Blackwell. Diana's smile vanished. You know nothing about my situation. Precisely my point, Olivia countered, maintaining her composure. We're strangers. Let's not presume to judge each other's circumstances. Before Deanna could respond, Flynn returned, his expression tense. Olivia, are you ready to leave? Grateful for the interruption, Olivia nodded. Yes, I believe I've had enough entertainment for one evening. In the carriage returning to the hotel, Flynn was uncharacteristically quiet. Olivia, still unsettled by her encounter with Deanna, waited for him to speak first. Finally, as the carriage turned onto the hotel street, she asked, "What did Blackwell want?" Flynn's jaw tightened. "To deliver an ultimatum. He's given me 1 week to accept his offer for the freight company. After that, he says he'll pursue other methods of acquisition." That sounds like a threat. It was meant to be. Flynn helped her from the carriage when it stopped at the hotel entrance. Blackwell doesn't respond well to being thwarted. They walked in silence through the hotel lobby. At the foot of the grand staircase, where they would part ways to their separate rooms, Flynn finally turned to face her. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "This evening was meant to be enjoyable, not filled with veiled threats and business concerns." Olivia shook her head. "You have nothing to apologize for. I had a wonderful time despite Blackwell's interruptions." She hesitated, then added, "Though I should mention that Miss Reynolds took the opportunity to warn me about rumors." Flynn's expression darkened. "What rumors about me? My presence at the ranch?" "Our arrangement." Olivia glanced away, uncomfortable with the topic. "She implied that people are questioning my reputation because I'm living under your roof without family or connections." A muscle worked in Flynn's jaw. Deanna Reynolds is hardly the arbiter of propriety. Her own situation with Blackwell is far from conventional. Nevertheless, she may have a point about appearances. Olivia gathered her courage to ask the question that had been forming in her mind. "Flynn, what am I to you? An employee, a charity case, a friend?" The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Flynn stepped closer, his gaze intense. "You know you're more than an employee or a charity case, Olivia." "Then what?" she pressed, heart racing. Flynn hesitated, seeming to wage some internal battle. Then, with a gentleness that contrasted with his powerful frame, he took her hand in his. "When I first saw you on that auction platform, something in me responded to something in you. I didn't understand it then. I'm not sure I fully understand it now." He drew a deep breath. "But I know that you've become essential to me in ways I never anticipated." It wasn't quite a declaration of love, but it was honest, and for Flynn York, a man of few words and careful emotions, it was revelatory. Olivia felt her own barriers crumbling in response to his vulnerability. "You've become essential to me too," she admitted softly. Flynn's eyes darkened. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he leaned down and brushed his lips against hers in a kiss so tender it brought tears to her eyes. It lasted only a moment, but when he drew back, something had fundamentally shifted between them. "Good night, Olivia," he said, his voice husky. "Good night, Flynn," she whispered in return. As she climbed the stairs to her room, Olivia felt as though she were floating, her body still resonating with the brief but profound connection they had shared. Whatever tomorrow might bring with Blackwell and his threats, tonight had revealed the truth of what lay in her heart, and she dared to hope, in Flynn's as well. Morning brought pragmatic concerns crashing back. Over breakfast in her room, Olivia wrote out a detailed list of the actions they would need to take to counter Blackwell's ultimatum. When Flynn knocked on her door an hour later, she was ready with practical suggestions rather than romantic musings. If he was surprised by her businesslike demeanor after last night's tender moment, he didn't show it. Instead, he seemed relieved to focus on strategy rather than navigate the shifting emotional terrain between them. "I've had some inquiries made about Blackwell's recent land acquisitions," he told her as they reviewed her notes. "He's definitely assembling parcels around my freight headquarters, but there's one key property he hasn't secured yet: the old Miller warehouse on Cherry Creek." Olivia tapped her pencil thoughtfully against the paper. "Who owns it?" "A widow named Eleanor Miller, no relation to the doctor, as far as I know. She inherited it from her husband and has been holding on to it despite numerous offers." "Including offers from Blackwell," Flynn nodded. "According to my source, he's approached her several times, each offer more generous than the last. She's refused them all." "Why?" Olivia asked, intrigued. "That's what I intend to find out." Flynn stood, gathering the papers. "I've arranged to meet with Mrs. Miller this afternoon. I'd like you to come with me." They spent the morning at Flynn's Denver office, a modest but well-appointed space above a hardware store on Larimer Street. Olivia helped organize the documents they had brought from the ranch, ensuring that all the freight company's affairs were in order should legal complications arise from the conflict with Blackwell. At 2 o'clock, they set out for the home of Eleanor Miller in Denver's oldest residential neighborhood. The house was a handsome brick structure set back from the street, with a well-tended garden blooming with summer flowers. A maid admitted them to a comfortable parlor where their hostess awaited. Eleanor Miller proved to be a surprise. Olivia had expected an elderly widow. Instead, she found a vibrant woman, perhaps in her early 40s, with keen blue eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She wore practical but well-made clothing and greeted them with businesslike cordiality. "Mr. York," she said, offering her hand rather than the customary curtsy. "And Miss Zachary, please be seated. My maid will bring tea shortly." Once the pleasantries were observed and tea served, Flynn came directly to the point. "Mrs. Miller, I understand you own the warehouse property at Cherry Creek and Wazee Street." "I do," she confirmed. "One of several properties my late husband left in my care." "And you've declined to sell it to Harrison Blackwell, despite increasingly generous offers." A spark of amusement lit her eyes. "You're well informed, Mr. York. Yes, I've refused Mr. Blackwell's offers, the most recent being substantially above market value." "May I ask why?" Flynn inquired. Mrs. Miller set down her teacup with deliberate precision. "Because I don't like him or his methods," she said bluntly. "Thomas, my husband, believed in honest business dealings. Blackwell represents everything he despised in the commercial world." Olivia found herself immediately liking this forthright woman. "Mrs. Miller, Mr. Blackwell has been pressuring Mr. York to sell his freight company. We believe he's acquiring the surrounding properties to force the issue." "I suspected as much." Mrs. Miller nodded thoughtfully. "He's not subtle in his ambitions. Denver is growing rapidly, and whoever controls transportation to the mining towns controls a significant portion of the territory's wealth." Flynn leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Mrs. Miller, I'm not here to pressure you about the warehouse." but I would like to understand your long-term intentions for the property. It's strategically important to my business." The widow studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his character. "My intention was to hold it until my son returns from his studies back east. He has an interest in architecture and engineering. The warehouse, with its location and structure, might serve as his first major project." "When does he return?" Olivia asked. "Not for another year at least." Mrs. Miller sighed. "In the meantime, the property sits empty, generating no income but requiring ongoing maintenance and taxes." Flynn nodded understanding. "A difficult position, indeed, particularly with Blackwell becoming increasingly insistent in his attempts to persuade me." Something in her tone made Olivia look up sharply. "Has he threatened you, Mrs. Miller?" The widow's expression tightened. "Not directly, but there have been incidents: a broken window, a small fire in the garden shed that was quickly contained. Nothing that could be traced back to him, of course." Olivia exchanged a glance with Flynn, seeing her own concern reflected in his eyes. "That's troubling," he said quietly. "Yes, though I'm not easily intimidated." Mrs. Miller straightened her shoulders. "Now, Mr. York, you haven't yet stated your purpose in coming here today. Are you hoping to make an offer for the warehouse yourself?" "No," Flynn replied, surprising both women. "I'm proposing a partnership." Mrs. Miller raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "I need access to the warehouse for my freight operations." "You need income from the property and protection from Blackwell's pressure tactics. I suggest a lease arrangement that would benefit us both, with an option for your son to take over the property when he returns and develop it, as he sees fit, potentially in continued partnership with my company." It was an elegant solution, Olivia realized. Flynn would secure the access he needed without requiring Mrs. Miller to sell, while the widow would gain both income and a powerful ally against Blackwell's intimidation. Mrs. Miller seemed to recognize the advantages as well. "An interesting proposition. I would need to see the specific terms, of course." "Of course," Flynn agreed. "Miss Zachary can draw up a preliminary agreement for your review." "Very well." Mrs. Miller rose, signaling the end of the meeting. "I look forward to receiving your proposal, Mr. York. And might I say, it's refreshing to conduct business with someone who approaches negotiations as an opportunity for mutual benefit rather than domination." As they departed, Olivia couldn't help but feel they had gained not just a potential business partner, but a valuable ally in their conflict with Blackwell. "That was brilliant," she told Flynn as they walked back toward the center of town. "A partnership rather than a purchase. It solves everyone's problems." Flynn smiled, looking more relaxed than he had all day. "Not everyone's. Blackwell will be furious when he discovers I've secured access to the warehouse without buying it." "Good," Olivia said with unexpected vehemence. "After what Mrs. Miller said about the incidents at her property, I'm convinced he's willing to go to extreme lengths to get what he wants." Flynn's expression sobered. "Which is why we need to be prepared. If Blackwell is resorting to intimidation tactics, the situation could become dangerous." He was right, of course. They were no longer engaged in merely business competition, but something potentially more sinister. The realization cast a shadow over the success of their meeting with Mrs. Miller. That evening, after a quiet dinner in Flynn's hotel suite, they worked side by side drafting the partnership agreement for Olivia Miller. The comfortable domesticity of the scene wasn't lost on Olivia. Flynn in his shirt sleeves at the writing desk. She curled in an armchair nearby, both focused on their shared goal. When the document was complete to their satisfaction, Flynn poured them each a small glass of brandy and joined Olivia by the fire. Outside, a summer thunderstorm had rolled in from the mountains, rain lashing against the windows and thunder rumbling in the distance. "To successful negotiations," Flynn said, raising his glass in a toast. Olivia clinked her glass against his. "And to thwarting Harrison Blackwell." They sipped in companionable silence for a moment. Then Flynn said, "We should return to the ranch tomorrow. I don't like being away too long, especially with Blackwell in this mood." Olivia nodded, though a part of her was reluctant to leave Denver and the progress they had made not just in business matters but in their personal relationship. Away from the ranch and its daily demands, Flynn had been more open, more expressive. She feared that returning might reinstate the careful boundaries they had begun to cross. "Olivia." Flynn's voice drew her from her thoughts. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "There's something I need to say before we go back." "Yes," she prompted when he hesitated. He set down his brandy glass and took her hand in his. "These past months, having you at the ranch, working together, it's changed me, changed how I see my life and my future." Olivia's heart began to race. "Flynn, please, let me finish." His thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. "I brought you to my home because I couldn't bear to see you treated as property. I offered you employment because I recognized your intelligence and capability. But what's grown between us is something I never expected or sought." He drew a deep breath. "I love you, Olivia, not as an employee or a ward or even a friend. I love you as a man loves a woman he wants to share his life with." The simple declaration, spoken without embellishment or flowery language, was all the more powerful for its directness. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, not of sadness but of overwhelming emotion. "I love you too," she whispered. "I've been fighting it, telling myself it was just gratitude or admiration. But it's more than that, so much more." Flynn lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent shivers through her entire body. "When we return to the ranch, I want us to begin a proper courtship. No more confusion about your position or our relationship, if you'll permit it." Olivia smiled through her tears. "I would like that very much." This time, when he leaned in to kiss her, there was nothing hesitant or brief about it. His lips claimed hers with gentle passion, his hand cradling her face as if she were precious beyond measure. Olivia responded with all the love she had kept guarded in her heart, letting herself be drawn into his embrace. When they finally parted, both a little breathless, Flynn rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably say good night," he murmured reluctantly, "before propriety is completely abandoned." Olivia nodded, though leaving was the last thing she wanted to do. "Until tomorrow, then." He walked her to the door of his suite, stealing one more kiss before letting her go. "Sleep well, Olivia." "You too, Flynn." As she made her way to her own room down the hall, Olivia felt as though she were walking on air. After all the darkness and uncertainty of recent months, the future suddenly seemed bright with possibility. Tomorrow they would return to the ranch, not as employer and employee, but as a couple beginning a journey together. The thought was still warming her heart when she inserted her key into her hotel room door and found it already unlocked. Alarm shot through her. She was certain she had locked the door when leaving earlier. Hand trembling, she pushed it open slowly, peering into the dimly lit room. Everything appeared undisturbed at first glance. Then she saw an envelope propped against the mirror on the dressing table. Her name was written across the front in bold, unfamiliar handwriting. Heart pounding, Olivia approached the envelope and picked it up. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery with a brief message. "Miss Zachary, your association with Flynn York puts you in grave danger. He has enemies who will not hesitate to use you against him. For your own safety, return east immediately." A concerned friend, Olivia stared at the note, a chill running down her spine. Someone had been in her room, had touched her belongings, invaded her privacy. And the message itself, with its ominous warning, was it a genuine attempt to protect her or a veiled threat? Her first instinct was to run to Flynn, but she hesitated. If this was Blackwell's doing, perhaps that was exactly what he wanted to frighten her into creating a distraction, dividing Flynn's attention at a critical moment in their business conflict. Taking a deep breath, Olivia carefully examined the room. Nothing appeared to be missing or disturbed beyond the note. After checking that the windows were secure and the wardrobe empty of intruders, she wrapped herself in a shawl and sank into a chair to think. The note's suggestion that she return east was telling. Whoever wrote it wanted her gone, away from Flynn and Denver. That suggested the concern was far from genuine. Decision made, Olivia placed the note in her reticule. She would show it to Flynn in the morning, when they were both clear-headed and prepared to discuss its implications rationally. Until then, she would sleep with her door firmly barricaded. Morning came after a fitful night's rest. Olivia dressed quickly in her traveling clothes and packed her belongings, keeping the mysterious note in her pocket. She was just closing her trunk when a knock sounded at her door. "Who is it?" she called, hand instinctively going to the small Derringer pistol Flynn had insisted she carry since their arrival in Denver. "It's Flynn." Relief flooded through her. She opened the door to find him looking alert but concerned. "You're ready early," he observed, noting her traveling attire. "I didn't sleep well," she admitted, stepping back to allow him into the room. "Something happened last night after I left you." Quickly, she explained about the unlocked door and the note which she handed to him. Flynn read it, his expression darkening ominously. "Blackwell," he growled. "This has his mark all over it." "That was my thought as well," Olivia agreed. "Though I don't understand how he gained access to my room. Money can open many doors in a hotel, even one as respectable as this." Flynn carefully folded the note and placed it in his pocket. "This changes our plans. We leave for the ranch immediately within the hour if possible." Olivia nodded, relieved by his decisive response. "I'm already packed." Flynn's gaze softened as he looked at her. "Are you all right? This must have been frightening." "I'm unsettled," she admitted, but not frightened enough to heed the note's advice to return east. A smile ghosted across his lips. "I never thought you would be. You're made of stronger stuff than Blackwell realizes." He moved toward the door, then paused, turning back to her. "Olivia, what I said last night about us, about a courtship, it still stands. But I want you to know that if this situation with Blackwell becomes too dangerous, I would understand if you decided, Flynn York." She interrupted firmly. "If you're about to suggest I might abandon you because of some vague threat, you don't know me as well as you think you do." The tension in his shoulders eased visibly. "I'm beginning to see that." He offered his arm. "Come on, I'll help you with your trunk and then we'll settle our account and be on our way." They departed Denver shortly after 9 o'clock, traveling in Flynn's sturdy wagon with a rifle within easy reach. The road was quiet, the recent rain having tamped down the dust, but not made the track too muddy to navigate. By noon, they had left the city well behind, entering the more sparsely populated foothills that would eventually lead back to the ranch. Flynn was unusually vigilant, his gaze constantly scanning the landscape as they traveled. Olivia, too, found herself watching for any sign of pursuit or ambush, though she tried to maintain a conversation to avoid giving in to paranoia. "You think Blackwell would actually attempt violence?" she asked as they stopped to rest the horses beside a small stream. Flynn considered the question seriously. "Not directly. Men like Blackwell operate through proxies hired muscle who can't be traced back to them. But yes, I think he's capable of arranging harm if he believes it would serve his purposes." "And Mrs. Miller?" if he's already intimidating her with minor incidents. We'll send word as soon as we reach the ranch. I have friends in Denver who can ensure she has protection until our agreement is finalized. The mention of the ranch brought another thought to Olivia's mind. Flynn, when we return, how will we handle the change in our relationship? Will you tell the staff, Mrs. Garcia? The ranch hands, he smiled, some of the tension leaving his face. Mrs. Garcia already knows, I suspect. She sees more than she lets on. He took Olivia's hand, his expression growing serious again. As for the others, yes, I intend to make it clear that our relationship has changed, that you are not an employee but my courting partner. The somewhat awkward term made Olivia smile. Courting partner. Is that what they call it in Yale? Flynn chuckled, the sound warming her heart. Perhaps not, but it's accurate, isn't it? We're beyond friendship, but not yet. He hesitated. Engaged, Olivia supplied, her cheeks warming at her own boldness. Yes. His eyes held hers, filled with promise. Though I hope that will change in time. The simple statement, with all it implied about their future, filled Olivia with joy that temporarily banished her concerns about Blackwell and his threats. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They resumed their journey, the wagon rolling steadily westward as the afternoon sun began its descent toward the mountains. The terrain grew increasingly familiar as they neared the ranch, and Olivia found herself looking forward to seeing the place she had come to think of as home. Home. The word resonated in her mind with new meaning. When she had arrived at the York ranch just months ago, battered, terrified, with nothing but the clothes on her back, she could never have imagined how completely her life would transform. From victim to business manager to beloved, it seemed almost miraculous. Flynn must have been thinking along similar lines, for he said suddenly, "You remember what I said to you that first day, about silk?" Olivia nodded. "You said I would wear it someday, and that it would be payment enough for your help." "I meant it as a symbol," he explained, "of reclaiming your dignity, your independence. But now," he glanced at her with a smile, "I find I like seeing you in silk for entirely different reasons." The admission, with its hint of masculine appreciation, sent a pleasant warmth through her. "I confess I've grown rather fond of it myself," she replied lightly, "though I'm not sure how many occasions there will be for evening gowns at the ranch." "We'll make occasions," Flynn promised. "Perhaps a trip to San Francisco in the fall, when the cattle sales are complete, or to St. Louis in the spring." The casual mention of future plans together reinforced the sense that they were building something lasting, a partnership in life as well as business. They were less than 2 hours from the ranch, traveling through a wooded section of the trail, when disaster struck. A fallen tree blocked the path ahead, too large to easily move and positioned in such a way that going around it would be difficult. Flynn pulled the wagon to a halt, frowning. "That's not natural," he said quietly. The tree was cut, not felled by wind or lightning. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the late afternoon shadows. An ambush, possibly. Flynn reached for the rifle, scanning the dense trees on either side of the road. "Stay in the wagon." "I'm going to." The sharp crack of a gunshot cut him off. Flynn ducked instinctively, pulling Olivia down beside him as another shot splintered the wagon's side panel. "Run," he ordered, thrusting the rifle into her hands. "Into the trees, away from the road. I'll hold them off." "I'm not leaving you," Olivia protested, her heart pounding with fear, not for herself but for him. "Olivia, please." His eyes met hers, fierce with determination. "I can't fight if I'm worried about you being hit. Take the rifle and go, I'll find you." Another shot, closer this time, decided the matter. Clutching the rifle, Olivia scrambled from the wagon and darted into the underbrush, heading away from the road as Flynn had instructed. Behind her, She heard him returning fire with his revolver, the exchange of shots echoing through the trees. Olivia ran until her lungs burned, the unfamiliar weight of the rifle hampering her progress. When she could go no farther, she crouched behind a large boulder, trying to quiet her breathing as she listened for any sound of pursuit. The forest had gone eerily silent. No more gunshots, no shouts, no crashing through the underbrush, just the occasional call of a bird and the whisper of wind through the pines. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Olivia waited, torn between the impulse to return to the road to find Flynn and the knowledge that doing so might put them both in greater danger. Just as she had decided, she couldn't bear the uncertainty any longer. A twig snapped nearby. Olivia raised the rifle, her hands trembling slightly as she aimed toward the sound. "Olivia," Flynn's voice low and cautious. "It's me, don't shoot." Relief flooded through her as he appeared from behind a cluster of pines, revolver still in hand but otherwise apparently unharmed. "Flynn." She lowered the rifle, rushing to meet him. "Are you all right? What happened?" "I'm fine." He holstered his weapon, gathering her into a brief, fierce embrace before stepping back to examine her. "You're not hurt?" "No, just frightened." "Who was shooting at us?" Flynn's expression was grim. "Two men, strangers. Hired guns, most likely. They fled when they realized I was armed and prepared to defend myself." "Blackwell," Olivia said with certainty. "Probably, though we'll never prove it." Flynn took the rifle from her, checking that it was still loaded. "We need to get moving. They might return with reinforcements." "The wagon, abandoned for now. We're closer to the ranch than Denver at this point. We'll continue on foot until we reach Wright's Creek, then follow it to Sanchez's farm. He's one of my hands. He'll get word to the ranch and bring horses." The plan was sound, but Olivia couldn't help glancing down at her traveling dress and low-heeled boots, hardly ideal for a cross-country hike through rough terrain as evening approached. Flynn followed her gaze and smiled grimly. "I know it's not ideal, but we don't have much choice." "Lead on," Olivia said resolutely. "I may not be dressed for a wilderness trek, but I'm certainly not staying here to wait for those men to return." For the next hour, they moved steadily through the forest, Flynn setting a pace that was challenging but not impossible for Olivia to maintain. The sun was setting, painting the western sky in brilliant oranges and reds, by the time they reached the creek Flynn had mentioned. "We'll follow this downstream," he explained, helping her down the steep bank. "It's easier going, and Sanchez's farm is about 2 miles from here." Olivia nodded, too breathless for conversation. Her dress was torn in several places from catching on branches, her boots were scuffed beyond recognition, and she had lost her hat somewhere along the way. But none of that mattered. They were alive, they had a plan, and soon they would be safely back at the ranch. Darkness fell as they continued their journey, the half-moon providing just enough light to see the creek's path. Flynn moved with the sure-footed confidence of someone who knew the land intimately, occasionally reaching back to take Olivia's hand when the terrain grew especially challenging. "Almost there," he encouraged as they rounded a bend in the creek and saw lights glimmering in the distance. "That's Sanchez's place." The farm proved to be a modest cabin with a barn and corral set in a clearing near the water. As they approached, a dog began barking, and moments later the cabin door opened, a figure silhouetted against the warm light from within. "Who's there?" called a wary voice in accented English. "It's Flynn York, Miguel," Flynn called back. "We need help." The figure lowered what appeared to be a shotgun and stepped forward. "Mr. York, what happened?" Quickly, Flynn explained their situation while Sanchez, a stocky man with a thick mustache and weathered features, ushered them into the warmth of his cabin. His wife, Elena, immediately bustled about, providing food and coffee while exclaiming over Olivia's bedraggled appearance. Ambushed on the road, Miguel shook his head in disbelief as he sat across from Flynn at the rough wooden table. Who would dare such a thing? That's what we need to find out, Flynn replied. But first, we need to get back to the ranch. Can you spare 2 horses? And someone to ride to town for the sheriff? Of course, patron. My son can take word to Sheriff Davis tonight. Miguel glanced at Olivia, who was gratefully accepting a cup of hot coffee from Alina. But perhaps the señorita should rest here tonight. It is another hour to the ranch, even on horseback, and she looks exhausted. Flynn looked to Olivia, leaving the decision to her. Despite her fatigue, she shook her head firmly. I want to go home, to the ranch, home. The word slipped out naturally, and she saw Flynn's expression soften at hearing it. Very well, Miguel agreed. I will saddle the horses. Alina, perhaps you have a shawl the señorita can borrow. The night grows cold. Within half an hour, they were mounted and ready to depart. Olivia wrapped in a warm woolen shawl that Alina had insisted she keep. Miguel's son, a teenager named Joaquin, had already ridden for town to fetch the sheriff, while Miguel himself would head to the ambush site at first light to see what evidence might be found. Thank you for everything, Olivia told Alina as they prepared to leave. Your kindness means more than I can say. The older woman patted her hand. It is nothing. Mr. York has been good to our family. We are happy to help him and you. The ride to the ranch was mercifully uneventful. Olivia, though she had not ridden a horse in years before coming to the ranch, had become comfortable enough in the saddle during her time with Flynn to manage the journey despite her fatigue. The half-moon provided sufficient light for the horses to find their way along the familiar trail. They crested the final rise just before midnight, the ranch buildings spread out below them, a few windows still glowing with lamplight despite the late hour. Flynn reached across the space between their horses to take Olivia's hand. Welcome home, he said softly. The simple words, spoken with such warmth, brought tears to her eyes. After everything, the auction platform where she had stood in rags, the dangers they had faced, the emotions they had finally acknowledged, they had made it back. Together. As they rode into the yard, the front door of the main house flew open, Mrs. Garcia rushing out in her nightdress and shawl. Flynn, Miss Olivia, thank God. She hurried toward them as they dismounted. We've been so worried. Mr. Peterson from Denver telegraphed that you had left yesterday morning, but when night fell and you hadn't arrived. We ran into trouble on the road, Flynn explained, handing the reins of both horses to a ranch hand who had emerged from the bunkhouse. But we're home now, safe and sound. You're both a sight, Mrs. Garcia declared, taking in their disheveled appearance. Come inside this instant. I'll heat water for baths and find something for you to eat. Too exhausted to protest the fuss, Olivia allowed herself to be led into the house, Flynn close behind. In the familiar warmth of the kitchen, with the scent of fresh bread still lingering in the air and Mrs. Garcia's efficient ministrations surrounding them, the terrors of the day began to recede. Later, after a hot bath and a simple meal of bread and soup, Olivia sat wrapped in a blanket before the fire in the library. Flynn joined her, freshly bathed and changed himself, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. Sheriff Davis will be here by morning, he told her, settling into the chair beside hers. Though I doubt he'll find much. Whoever Blackwell hired will be long gone by now. Olivia nodded, too tired to feel anything but a dull ache of disappointment at the likely lack of justice. What will we do now? Flynn took a sip of his whiskey, the firelight playing across his strong features. First, rest. Then we fight back not with guns but with the law and business. I've already sent telegrams to my attorney in Denver and to Judge Patterson. Blackwell has crossed a line and there will be consequences. And Mrs. Miller, protected. The judge will see to it personally. Flynn reached over to take her hand, his expression softening. But tonight, none of that matters. What matters is that you're safe, that we both are. Olivia squeezed his hand, drawing comfort from his strength. I was so afraid, she admitted quietly. Not of the men with guns, strangely enough, but of losing you just when we've found each other. Flynn set aside his whiskey and moved to kneel before her chair, taking both her hands in his. Olivia Zachary, I have something to ask you. Her heart began to race as she recognized the seriousness in his tone. Yes, today made me realize that life is uncertain and time is precious. His gray eyes held hers, filled with an emotion that took her breath away. I had planned to court you properly, to give you time to be certain of your feelings. But if you already know your heart as surely as I know mine. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Opening it, he revealed a ring of perfect sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, set in white gold. This was my mother's, he said softly. My father gave it to her as a promise that she would never again be anyone's property but her own, that she would be his partner, his equal, his beloved. Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as Flynn continued, his voice steady but filled with emotion. I'm asking you to be my wife, Olivia, not because you need my protection or I need your skills, though both are true, but because I love you completely and without reservation. Because I want to build a life with you, a home, a family, a future. Olivia's vision blurred with tears of joy. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. Yes, Flynn York, I will marry you. With gentle reverence, he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand. Then he rose, drawing her to her feet and into his embrace. Their kiss was a promise of love, of commitment, of a shared journey that had begun on the most unlikely of days, when a woman sold for the clothes on her back had found her champion in a cowboy who saw her true worth. 6 months later, as winter snow blanketed the Colorado mountains, Olivia York stood before the mirror in the master bedroom of the ranch house, admiring the effect of her new gown. The deep burgundy silk rustled pleasantly as she turned, the fabric catching the golden light from the oil lamps. You look beautiful, Flynn said from the doorway, his eyes warm with appreciation. Though I maintain that you would look equally stunning in burlap. Olivia laughed, moving to straighten his string tie. Flatterer, but I prefer silk thanks to you. She glanced down at her wedding ring, nestled beside the sapphire engagement ring on her left hand. Is everyone here? The house is full to bursting. Mrs. Garcia is in her element, directing the kitchen like a general commanding troops. Flynn captured her hands, bringing them to his lips. Are you ready, Mrs. York? Our first Christmas party as host and hostess. Ready, she confirmed, her heart full of joy at the simple domestic title. Host and hostess, husband and wife, partners in all things. The past months had brought many changes, all for the better. Harrison Blackwell had faced legal consequences for the ambush attempt, though he had managed to avoid the most serious charges by claiming no knowledge of his hired men's actions. His reputation in Denver society was severely damaged, however, and his engagement to Diana Reynolds had been broken off amid whispers of financial difficulties. Olivia Miller had become not just a business partner but a dear friend to Olivia. Their warehouse partnership had proven profitable for both parties, and Mrs. Miller's son had returned from his studies to begin renovations that would modernize the facility while maintaining its historic character. The ranch itself had prospered under their joint management. Olivia's head for business complemented Flynn's practical knowledge perfectly, and together they had expanded their holdings and influence throughout the territory. Their wedding in October had been a community celebration, attended by everyone from Judge Patterson to Miguel Sanchez and his family. Now, as they descended the stairs to greet their Christmas guests, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the auction platform where she had stood in rags, utterly alone and hopeless, to this, a home filled with friends, a thriving business, and a husband who cherished her as his equal. Flynn paused at the foot of the stairs, drawing her close for one more private moment before they joined their guests. "Happy?" he asked, his voice low and intimate. "Completely," she assured him, rising on tiptoe to brush a kiss across his lips. "And grateful. For you, for this life we're building, for everything." His smile, the one reserved only for her, warmed her heart. "I told you you'd wear silk someday," he reminded her softly. Olivia laughed, linking her arm with his as they moved toward the sound of their guests' cheerful voices. "You did indeed, though I think we both got far more than we bargained for." "The best kind of bargain," Flynn agreed, squeezing her hand as they prepared to enter the festively decorated parlor. One where both parties gained something priceless. As they stepped forward to welcome their guests, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that the tattered dress she had worn that fateful day in Whisper Creek had been exchanged for something far more valuable than silk. She had gained love, respect, purpose, and a partner with whom to share all the adventures that lay ahead, from rags to riches indeed. But the true wealth was in her heart.